Welcome to the Hashimoto's Doctor podcast. You're now part of a growing community of people determined to take their health back through education and self-empowerment. But because of the healthcare system today, we don't have access to the types of healthcare that we want. So we have to do things differently. We've got to do things smarter, and we do that by becoming our own advocates. This podcast will give you the perspective and thoughts of one of the world's leading Hashimoto's doctors. So let's get started. Hey guys, Dr. Shook here. I hope you're doing well today. Today, in this podcast, what I want to talk to you guys about is something that's super important. And I've been talking a lot more about it. If you've been following me on Facebook and my live streams, then you know that one of the things that I've been focusing on very, very heavily are toxins in our environment. And I think that this is the hidden epidemic that poses the greatest risk to all of humanity. But really, when we look at the immediate threat to each and every one of us, our families, our children, our grandchildren, our parents, our grandparents, to everyone, to unborn children, this is the greatest risk factor. And I think the thing that is, we are seeing, most people are completely oblivious to it, including healthcare providers. This is something that is at such, it's so well hidden because we're not talking about, these acute or short-term effects of being poisoned by something, like that you might see in an occupational environment where someone gets an accidental exposure to, a particular chemical and they're obviously poisoned, right? It's a short-term, very short-term acute thing that they have symptoms of, and it's well observed. Now, what I'm talking about is the slow poisoning through thousands of different chemicals that are creating massive disease throughout the United States and ultimately the world. And what we're really looking at here, we know that there are well over 70,000 chemicals, both agricultural and industrial, manufactured every single year in the trillions of pounds. Trillions. And I'm talking like 4 trillion pounds. That's such a huge number that it's very hard to conceive. And it's very hard for me to even imagine that many pounds of anything can really be physically made. Where does it come from? Where are we getting the raw materials to produce it? It's just such a huge number that it's hard to fathom. But the reality is that this, the chemicals that we're being poisoned from are really being used in all different aspects of, manufacturing, industry, and agriculture. And they're so pervasive that we just, the regulatory bodies, the FDA, the EPA, the FDA, for example, the most common places where you're going to get exposure, guys, are going to be in your foods and your health and beauty aids. Okay, what we call health and beauty aids. Because what happens is that, first of all, in food, in growing food, especially conventionally grown food, we know that you will significantly lower your burden to toxins eating organic food over conventional food, which is raised with pesticides, herbicides, and more of these industrial fertilizers. We know that you will reduce your burden. There have been studies done on that show it. Now, so the food, just the fertilizer, for example, that's used, breaks down into compounds that are very dangerous to our health. We know it for sure. I mean, there's not a question. And we're being exposed to that. There are so many other levels here. I'm just going to touch on the very high points. Herbicides, like things that are sprayed on the plants. Right now with farming, for example, it is so much easier to spray chemicals on a plant and kill the surrounding weeds that are growing, that are competing for resources and fertilizer or nitrogen in the soil. It's much easier to spray chemicals that will kill all the surrounding plants than it is to weed the plants. You understand? So if a farmer was going to take a huge tractor with a special attachment designed to weed and to pull weeds out of the ground, then that's going to take a tremendous amount of time, and it's not going to be as efficient as just dumping a tremendous amount of herbicide, which is for plants, onto the crop and killing everything around it. And that's exactly what's happening with Roundup, which has the active ingredient glyphosate in it. The problem becomes here, guys, is that glyphosate, there are numerous studies. Stephanie Seneff, who's a researcher at MIT, has shown numerous correlation studies, which we know it doesn't equal causation, but I'm telling you right now that this stuff is going to pose a major and extremely dangerous health risk to us. We cannot ignore what is happening with the explosion of these diseases, of all kinds of chronic and degenerative disease processes, from diabetes, cancer, autoimmunity, heart disease, and neurodegenerative conditions. All these brain problems with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and dementia. This is a huge problem. We know that these pesticides and these herbicides, they're contributing both directly and indirectly to this process. So, you're getting it from your food with the different types of fertilizer, with the herbicides that are being sprayed, with the pesticides that are also being sprayed. The crops now are so different than they were because now they're genetically modifying so many of our crops, from corn to soybean to wheat, that now these frankenfoods, they're genetically modified. They splice genes of other things into the food to make it resistant or Roundup ready crops, right? So that they can spray and dump all these herbicides on there, and they'll live, and it will give them a higher yield. But at what cost? At what cost? Maybe at the cost of a lot of people's health and well-being. Maybe at the cost of our children's lives. Maybe at the cost of childhood cancer. Maybe at the cost of diabetes or severe autoimmunity, which is not acceptable at all. Not acceptable for one person. And this is what's happening. I'm telling you guys right now, this is a hidden epidemic. It's not necessarily intentionally hidden, but it is a difficult topic to study. But I'm telling you now that so of the 70,000 chemicals that are being used industrially and then also in agriculture, only about 1,500 have been studied. 1,500. That means that all of these other chemicals, 68,500, are being utilized on a massive scale with no research and no one knows what it's doing to humans, what it's doing to our environment, what it's doing to us. And so what happens here is that we're getting exposed to this from so many different angles, from our food, and then also from these health and beauty aids. The most common places, the average woman uses 10 to 12 different health and beauty aids: makeup, deodorant, lotions, hairspray, shampoo, you name it, face wash. All the different things you use. The average man uses 6 to 8 per day. Listen, you need to go. You can get the Think Dirty app. So you just go to either the iTunes or to the Android apps store, and you can get the Think Dirty app, and that will help you. It's got a barcode scanner. Just scan your products, and it will tell you if it's toxic or not. Okay, that's step one. Step one is to get that app and scan everything in your house. Everything in your house. And immediately remove the toxic things and look for on the app a safe alternative. Either order it on Amazon or wherever online, or go to your local health food store and order it. Order your safe alternatives and start changing your exposure immediately. Change it immediately in your food. So go to the Environmental Working Group, ewg.org, and get their Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 list. Okay, go there and remove every one of the dirty foods from your life. Do not buy them conventional. Do not eat them conventionally. And then look at the Clean 15, which are actually a list of foods that you can buy, vegetables and fruit that you can buy conventionally, which means they can be raised, conventionally with sprayed with herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizer being used. And you can buy those that have a much lower toxic burden. They're considered safe. Okay, so go there and do those things first, guys. This is disrupting everything. This is disrupting thyroid hormone physiology. You don't know how many of these chemicals. That last I searched, there were over 600 research papers on PubMed, which is where you can go and search peer-reviewed medical or indexed literature. It's research, right? You can search it with the keyword thyroid and endocrine disruptor, 602. Of the several, probably 50 or 60 that I reviewed, there were numerous studies and showing how these chemicals disrupted thyroid hormone physiology, in that it would stop it at every single point in the physiological process of thyroid hormone. And that means the signaling of the brain to tell the thyroid and the pituitary gland to make the hormone, all the way to the transportation of the hormone, and even the utilization of the thyroid hormone by the cells of your body. It would block the receptors, all of the cells of your body. It would decrease their sensitivity. It would block the utilization of the hormone once it's inside the cell. Guys, every single step of the process can be disrupted by chemicals. And guess how you can detect and tell if that's occurring? You can't. There's no way to tell if this is happening, if those chemicals are causing the dysfunction and your thyroid problems. We also know that these contribute to autoimmunity. So if you have Hashimoto's, guess what? These toxins are absolutely a contributing factor. Absolutely. Every single diabetes. I cannot tell you how many research papers there are now on these chemicals in our environment that promote diabetes at so many different levels. Decrease the pancreas's ability to put insulin out, decrease the cells of your body's ability to use your insulin. They're called diobetogens. Diobetogens, guys. That means they promote and contribute to diabetes. They're also called obesogens. Obesogens, meaning they contribute to obesity. You have to remove these things from your life, guys. The greatest risk factor for developing diabetes is the level of these chemicals in your body. Not your diet. The level of these chemicals in your body is the greatest risk factor for developing diabetes. Guys, I hope you're hearing me. God, I hope you guys hear me, because I can't tell you enough what a tragedy is unfolding, that unless you're listening to someone like me that's educating and teaching you guys, you're going to be completely left in the dark, and you and your family are going to be suffering with this, your community. Listen, my goal is to change one person's life at a time. If we can change one person's life, we can change their family. If we can do that, we can change their community, which will ultimately allow us and help us to change the world, which is my goal. So anyway, guys, I appreciate you hanging out with me today. I have so much information to share with you guys. So much information on toxins in the environment, how they affect our thyroid, and what we need to do about it. Guys, if you are struggling and you want to know how to get these things out of your body, you got to join me on our next webinar. Go to nomoreToxicBody.com. nomoreToxicBody.com. We have been using, and I've been taking groups of people of 30, no more than 30, through our detoxification program, which is 3 months long. This is a scientifically designed and developed detoxification program that works off of understanding how the body detoxifies, understanding what the types of chemicals and metals we're trying to eliminate are, and where they are stored in the body. Because listen to me, doing a liver cleanse or a colon cleanse is not a detox. That can be very, very dangerous for you, as a matter of fact. Most detoxes are 98% of them don't work. 50% I think are dangerous. And what you have to do is you have to understand that there are some chemicals that are very difficult to get out of our body. And that these chemicals, they embed themselves in different places. Some will embed themselves in our bone. Some will embed themselves in our fat, our body fat. Some will embed in our organs. Some will embed into, for example, our brain. And then others are in our blood. So it's easier to clear chemicals out of the blood, but it's a completely different story to get it out of the bone and to get it out of the other tissues. And you have to do it the right way, or it can be very dangerous, because as you start detoxing and you start losing, let's say you start detoxing and you start losing weight and body fat, you will actually end up releasing a lot of these chemicals into the bloodstream. So you have to be doing the right type of detox to bind these chemicals, or you're going to be auto-intoxicating, redistributing them through the body if you don't do this the right way. So that's why we are focusing on my practice, and what we do is we are focusing on. I do work with a few people very closely. We do 2 to 4 people max per month, one-on-one. But you have to be ready to get extensive testing, because we don't have time for trial and error. we can go through, you can go through our detox program and other programs if you want to do something that's, that's more guided, you can do that. But I just want to share this with you guys, and I really appreciate you hanging out with me today. I hope this helps you out. Remember, you can go to No More Toxic Body to register for the webinar, or you can go to drbradshuk.com to learn more about one-on-one help. Appreciate you guys. Hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed hanging out behind the scenes with Dr. Shook. You can also talk with and learn from Dr. Shook through Facebook Live on our Facebook page at the Office of Dr. Brad Shook. Don't forget, you can also get access to our videos, guidebooks, and thyroid programs at www.drbradshuk.com. Oh yeah, and don't forget one more thing. We can change the world one person, one family, and one community at a time. Until next time, remember, today is your day, and no one will tell you who you are and what you can be.